All right, so like I said, I'm Aaron, and I'll be your dungeon master for today's adventure. My talk is called Chaotic Neutral, QA Roles and Alignment, and today I want to look at software development and testing through the lens of role-playing games, specifically Dungeons and Dragons. Even more specifically, for those who know it, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 2nd edition, the one true version. Just kidding, but that's what I grew up with, and so that's what I'm going to do. Actually, just kidding. I didn't realize I'm on the technical track, so I changed my slides, and we're going to be talking about Cucumber, why I hate it, what's wrong with it, and why I still recommend using it. Not. But that's probably less far out than the idea of talking about role-playing games. How many of you have heard of D&D? How many of you have played D&D? What about any other role-playing games? Go ahead and shout out. Oh, yeah? Can you see it? Okay. I'm not sure if... I haven't played everything on my board, but I had a fun time building this list. I probably played about half of these games. MERP, role-playing in Middle-earth, with lots and lots of complex results tables, but still a fun game. Excellent modules for whatever system. Let's see, GURPS, generic role-playing, Gamma World, post-apocalyptic, RuneQuest, kind of the early alternative to D&D, Amber, diceless role-playing, what's that? I don't know what that is. It's from, they did Deadlands and a few other games. All right, cool. I don't know everything, but anyway, anyone have any other favorite role-playing games? Shadowrun is set in Seattle. All right. I've never played it. I did flip through the manual once. Well, what we really need, though, is, or what I thought we needed, was like a cyberpunk game that was just like William Gibson Neuromancer cyberpunk. That would be awesome, in my opinion. All right. How many of you don't know much about role-playing or haven't played Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that? Everyone here is a geek, huh? Except for one lady in the middle. All right, we're going to make you a convert. For you who don't know, what is fantasy role-playing? First of all, not that kind of role-playing and not that kind of fantasy. We're talking about a game with wizards and warriors and elves and dwarves and, of course, lots of Dungeons and Dragons and other monsters. Friends sitting around a table, throwing dice with pencils and paper, little miniature figurines, and big imaginations. Right? I got my start role-playing when I was a kid back in the 80s. That's the 1900s for you young people. After school and in the summers, I would go to the public library. Again, for you kids, a library, it's kind of like a primitive analog version of the internet with lots of websites all printed out and stacked on shelves and a search engine in little wooden boxes with slips of paper with links. And libraries usually have a friendly or mean AI chatbot that sits behind a big desk and helps you find things or tells you to shush. My librarian when I was a kid, I still remember his name. He was Steve. And Steve's algorithm noticed that I liked fantasy novels, and I checked out a lot of choose-your-own-adventure books. Anyone read those? So Steve asked if I'd ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons. I hadn't, so he explained what it is. You know, it's like a board game, but without a board, and you play using your imagination. It wasn't until a few years later that I actually played D&D with some friends, and we kind of stumbled through the basic rules, and it took some time before I got the hang of it. Anyway, I said I want to liken software development to role-playing. And for those who I've mentioned it, they say, oh yeah, I see a connection immediately. Let's see if your connections match with mine, right? To start off, software development teams have lots of different roles: developers, testers, system engineers and infrastructure engineers, designers, product owners, even a manager or two. And let's not forget about the customers. Well, we always do. But we're trying to work together to accomplish a common goal, right? But we all have different perspectives. Tester's goal: find bugs, critique the product, break the system, and point out flaws. Not everyone loves that. Developers don't like being told that their wonderful code that they slaved on to create and used a lot of creativity and intelligence to do has flaws. A tester can sound like a pessimist, always pointing out what's wrong. And sometimes testers are considered outsiders, naysayers, putting up roadblocks to being able to deliver software on time. And sometimes management even considers QA a waste of time and money. But I'm here to say that this seeming antagonism between testers and the rest of the development team can be a good thing. And that's why we should embrace our role of introducing chaos and through it bring about a more perfect order. All right. So probably many of you were introduced to role-playing games through video games. This was a very old game brought to you in EGA graphics. That's 16-bit colors. Maybe it's only 8-bit colors, actually, with animation. It was based on the King's Quest game, and it was called Quest for Glory, So You Want to Be a Tester. Anyway, computer role-playing games are great, but I still have nostalgia for the old tabletop games with nothing but dice and a rules book and some snacks and your imagination. So anyway, if you're here, you've probably already decided to be a tester. And I find it interesting how people go through that journey. I'd love to hear your story. At least when I was young and started in the career, 25 years ago, as was mentioned, nobody ever said, I want to be a quality assurance engineer when I grow up. So, how did you become a tester? I'd love to know. For me, it was pure chance, a roll of the dice. Chance plays a factor in a lot of things when we're testing. We have limited amounts of time and unlimited things to test. Randomness can actually help us. It can ensure variety. It can make sure you're covering what needs to be covered. And it can help you to test things that you wouldn't have otherwise covered. Chaos testing is a great technique. In role-playing, dice are not just used to create random encounters or combat results. They also set boundaries of probability and ensure a degree of fairness in the game. But don't leave testing up to chance. Create a plan, set priorities, and identify risks. But still leave a little room for some randomness. That's how the best bugs are found. All right, so on your tables, there's little black felt bags with dice inside of them. We're going to roll up and do some character generation. When in D&D you first create your character, I'm bad with the in and out on the mic. First thing you need to do is roll your stats. In D&D they call them abilities. I prefer to call them attributes because they're largely static. The first ability is strength. And then there's dexterity, in some games called agility, constitution, which might also be endurance, intelligence and wisdom, and finally charisma. So go ahead and take your dice and roll them, if you so choose. I thought I had an extra set for myself. And determine. Now, there's a trick here. For those of you who know doing D&D, you don't have the dice needed to create a character. Because you need 3d6. That's 3 six-sided, normal-looking dice, not these cool, weird-shaped polyhedral dice. But anyway, I thought they'd make good props. each person, they're just there as a prop for you to play with, really. I also got some stickers on the table, if you like them. QA strategy is not my business, but I'm working on a book called QA Strategy. And I call myself a QA strategist. So if you want a sticker, go ahead and take a sticker too. Anyway, so your stats or your abilities or attributes are largely static. They're not fixed, but it's hard to develop them and improve them. If you have a high skill in one category, you get a bonus. If you have a low skill, you get a minus, I guess. I like to think that different attributes can balance each other out. For instance, my low intelligence, I like to believe, is balanced out by my stubborn persistence and my stunning good looks. Don't laugh. That hurts. Not really. But besides these attributes that are largely fixed, sure, you can increase your strength by working out or your intelligence by studying. But skills and talents are different. You start off not knowing a skill, not knowing how to walk, or not knowing how to swing a sword, or not knowing how to write a selenium test. Those skills can be learned. But there are some things people have a natural talent or proclivity for. Some people are naturally drawn towards coding. Others are more naturally drawn towards documenting requirements or communicating or leadership skills. These are things you should develop. Lean into the skills that you're good at or that you have a preference for, whether you're good at or not. And also, be aware of your weaknesses. Character classes. Once you've got your basic attributes, you need to choose your character class. This is the general type of profession or role you want to be. We've already talked about different roles on a software development team. Tester is one of those roles. In D&D, you have 4 classic archetypes. The fighter, who uses strength. The thief, who uses cunning and stealth. The wizard or mage, who uses magic. And the cleric or healer, I have listed here, who communicates with deities and, of course, heals all the wounded warriors. We could think of the general archetypes in software development, developer, tester, and so on. But I think there's something a little more interesting when we look at, am I almost out of time? My clock must be off. Never mind. Okay. There are complex or secondary character classes, things like a warrior mage or a warrior monk, a bard, a scout, a ranger, paladin or barbarian, who specialize but also cross-pollinate skills. As a tester, learning development skills, learning management skills, learning leadership and mentoring skills can all help enhance our own abilities. Being multidisciplined is a way to be able to see things from a different perspective. And talking about perspectives is something I'm going to hark back to a lot in this talk. All right, alignment. All right, we've chosen our character class. We've determined our attributes. We need to choose our alignment. Are we going to be good or are we going to be evil? Now, there's really not a good and an evil in software development, except for Google, which for some strange reason removed that sign from their lobby. But from the perspective of a developer, you may be considered the bad guy for pointing out his issues. From the perspective of the executives, QA might be considered evil for being a cost center or for causing delays in delivery. Marketing, after all, said we were going to ship on this date, and the testers are telling us not to. I like to think, as my talk says, chaotic neutral, that we really are more neutral. We're not good or evil in the sense that we're not opposed to or in favor of releasing the software. We're more interested in finding the quality of the software and informing the decision makers. Now, there's another axis on this alignment in D&D, and I really like this 4-quadrant axis. Besides good and evil, there's lawful and chaotic. Chaotic neutral. Chaotic is, of course, chaos. We like to break things. We like to try different things. We don't like to follow the rules. That leads to creativity. It also leads to discovery. But there is a place for lawfulness. We need to have clear requirements, and a tester who is conscientious and I can't think of the right word, but good at documenting and doing things in the right way, repetitively, that's also a skill. But mix in a little chaos, as I said. It's good for you, and that's where the best bugs are found. Anyone have a good story? My favorite story was I was, in Redmond, not in Seattle, but in the area, working at AT&T, and I brought down the production database for AT&T's first integration with Amazon. This was back in 2000, 2001, with a SQL injection by using an apostrophe. Now, this production database, right, you're thinking AT&T and Amazon. That must have been devastating. It was an early pilot program. We were developing web services before there was even a term web services to integrate. You know, you buy a phone on Amazon and you activate it through. Anyway, one of my favorite stories. All right. Exploratory testing, destructive testing, all good things for chaos, but we also need some order, verifying functionality, and coming up with a plan and setting priorities. All right. Background. Every character has a background, and most people neglect this area in role-playing games. Your background can be your physical description, your height, weight, hair color, things like that. People fill on their character record sheets, but it should also be your history, your culture, your origin story. Every hero needs an origin story, and every villain needs a cause for why they turned evil. What makes you unique? Share that, even if it's things outside of your technical ability. It may be your social circumstances, your childhood, a different culture you were born in, personal opinions, weird hobbies, although it turns out that among software testers, playing role-playing games isn't that bizarre. All right. What's my time looking like? 9 minutes left? Okay, great. I'm probably going to breeze through some of this, but let's talk about combat in role-playing games. Whether you're swinging a sword, shooting an arrow, or sneaking up behind someone and sticking a dagger in their back. Combat has lots of rules. First, you need to know how to use your weapons, and you need to have weapons. You need to decide on the tactics for using those. Do you want to use brute force, expertise in a specific weapon, domain knowledge, speed, or intelligence? Same thing with testing. We have tools and weapons at our disposal. These things might be our test cases, our automation, programming languages, things that we know and can improve our skills on, things that maybe more or less. Java, high encumbrance, but also lots of high hit points. JavaScript, fast and agile, but also prone to blunders. Things like that. We all make mistakes and have blunders. In some games, there's the concept of, I think if you roll a natural 1 in D&D, it's been a long time, that's a blunder, and a 20 is a phenomenal success or a critical hit. So you've got a 5% chance, no matter how good or bad you are at anything, to either royally screw it up or succeed beyond your wildest expectations. Life's like that too sometimes. Like my SQL injection. I was actually doing songs, and the song I chose was "Smokin' in the Boys' Room" by Motley Crue. Just filling in text data, and that apostrophe caused the database corruption. Pure luck, again. Armor. Armor protects you from damage. Clear requirements, test case coverage, procedures. These things are like armor, but armor also can slow you down. I have THAC here, THAC 0. Can anyone explain what that is? 2-hit armor class 0. What that means is if someone is not wearing armor, how hard is it to hit them? I guess that doesn't really have a direct application to testing, but it's a nice bit of trivia. You also can receive damage when someone hits you or inflict damage, and the way they keep track of that is hit points. Has anyone ever looked at a test result? You've got pass, failed, errors. Those errors might be losing hit points. But anyway, you've got similar stats in testing that we use as a heuristic, not as a perfect measure of whether the product is healthy or not. But if you've got a lot of errors and failures, either your product's bad, your tests are bad, or your environment's bad, or your data's bad. I guess there's a lot of things it could be. Parrying and dodging is a way you can influence the outcome of a combat scenario. We can do that also with testing. We can focus on an area where we think there might be more bugs, because there has been in the past. We can also choose to allow risk in where we think it might be. How many people have found login bugs lately? Not a lot, right? How many people have run a login test 1,000 times and never seen it fail? You might have seen it fail a year or two ago when you were developing that feature or when you were modifying it, but that's something to consider. And lastly, the most important thing about combat is initiative. Things like if you have a longer sword or if you're using a ranged weapon, initiative is important. And something that people might have forgot about, we talk about agile in software. Agile these days slows us down, but the original idea was to make us more nimble and flexible and able to do things like dodging and gaining the initiative by changing in mid-stride. All right, magic. We got to boil through this because there's some good stuff. There's different types of magic: spells, potions and scrolls, wands, staffs, blah, 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 right? The idea here is automation can seem like magic, but it isn't. But magic, in theory, in a fantasy world, is applying a set of pseudo-scientific principles. We need to apply similar principles in our testing. We need to determine what should be automated and what should not be. Just like in combat, you can have critical blunders in magical spells, and you can have automation that will give you false results or sometimes bring down production systems. No comment on that. And then there are things, tools, that don't really exist, that defy the laws of physics. I'm thinking of things like a bag of holding with a whole universe inside. You can store whatever you want. Or boots of striding, where you can cross continents and steps. These things do not exist in the real world. Tools that claim to do these sorts of things also do not exist in software testing. AI. Movement and encumbrance. Note the spelling. The computer thinks there's no second E in encumbrance, but there is. All right. The equipment, the things we carry can slow us down, like this poor guy. Things that apply in software testing, the baggage that we hold in our test automation framework, the complexity of the systems we're testing, the rigid processes that we have. All these things are encumbrances that we need to shed in order to be able to move and gain the initiative in our testing. All right, perception checks and saving throws. Perception is important in testing. It helps you know what's important, what's not important, because we can't test everything. There are, as everyone's favorite individual, Donald Rumsfeld said, known knowns and unknown unknowns. We need to work on reducing that latter category. And saving throws. Don't be a hero. Well, this is all about being a hero, but don't be a hero all the time. Don't be that person who always comes in at the end and saves things at the last moment, who works extra overtime, who covers for others. It's not sustainable. That's just a word of caution. I want to move on here. Talk about adventures, campaigns, and quests. This does not map directly to sprints, milestones, and epics, but it's a useful comparison. We need to come together as a team to accomplish these goals. It's important to have goals, overarching goals. The director I know calls them North Star ideas, and it should be a simple sentence that it shouldn't be like many company mission statements. We strive to blah, blah, blah. No, it should be, we want to simplify this year, or we want more automation coverage, or we want people to be more communicative. These type of common goals, or product goals. We want more customers, or we want more customers to become paying customers. We want to reduce the bottlenecks in our infrastructure. These things help us think of what to do. Uh-oh, she's looking at me. You need a vision in order to. World building, we're going to skip through these. Am I out of time? 1 minute, okay. World building, team building, culture, all these things are important. Encounters, when you're traveling through the wilderness, do your exploratory testing, keep your eyes open. Bugbears and beholders, I want to mention this one. Intermittent issues, it works for me. Problems with data, parallelization and timing, unclear requirements. These can be bugbears, annoying, persistent, intermittent things. And beauty is in the eye of a beholder. The developer loves his code, and it works for him. Why not for you? All right, dungeons are dark, unescapable, locks, traps, and pits and monsters lurking in the dark. Unclear requirements, getting stuck in a rut, office politics. Don't get trapped in the dungeon. Dragons. Oops, I don't have any bullet points in here. But dragons represent the unknown. Here there be dragons. And dragons are mythical, enormous, powerful, intelligent, magical beasts, breathing fire and flying. They're undefeatable by ordinary measures. But remember that dragons are imaginary creatures. What are the dragons that you're afraid of slaying in work? And I guess I'd probably better wrap up here, right? I've got some more. Leveling up, building your character, and the Adventurers Guild, right? Networking, things like conferences, great things. And lastly, we've got to remember the NPCs, our friends and family who don't know anything about testing. Love them and appreciate what they put up with from us. All right, thanks.